Breaking news: Tulsi clarifies her endorsement of on Jimmy Dore.
Yes.
Her endorsement of Joe Biden, and we were in agreement on this one. Support, endorsement, same fucking thing.
Yeah.
I made this decision and made the announcement with a very clear view on where we are and what Democratic primary voters have decided about who the Democratic nominee will be to take on Trump in November. There are a lot of problems with this whole process. You and I have talked about this a number of times, but I'm a realist and very pragmatic about where we are and where we must go forward and how I can continue to best push these issues that I have focused on to the forefront, push this 21st century foreign policy change to the forefront. And I'm supporting Joe Biden to do that over Donald Trump. This is the choice that's before voters as we head towards the elections in November.
So is there a distinction between support and endorse or no?
Not really.
Okay.
So I just want to reiterate, I've said many times, Tulsi's a very practical, pragmatic person. She's very logical. I did not for a second believe that she endorsed Joe Biden because she was angry at Bernie, that she endorsed Joe Biden because she was somehow reacting emotionally. I 100% believe that she endorsed Joe Biden because of what she said, because she believes that he's the nominee. Now, do I think that the relationship with the Sanders campaign is strained and that he had a lot of fault in it and his campaign treated? Yeah, absolutely. There's no denying that. I mean, you guys, you can't deny the way she was mistreated and she wasn't really defended and all of that. But I knew that wasn't going to be the reason why she didn't endorse, Bernie. But I think it did have an effect as to not communicating and not building something together and all of those things. And then also on her last comment, obviously there's no doubt she was saying, no, there's no difference. Not really. So all those people that were saying, because people are still hung up on that. And I just don't understand. Like, come on, you guys.
Well, I see people on both sides kind of going at each other. And I'm going to just say my whole bit about this right now is everybody needs to just relax, back the F up, and let Tulsi and Bernie have some space to work it out. That's my personal opinion. And like I said, to me, it doesn't matter this particular point. Even if Jai put out that information that was false and they didn't, Tulsi didn't properly go out there and give them the chance to get the endorsement, whatever, what had happened, it already set things in motion. And we talked about the shunning of Tulsi Gabbard when it came to the Democratic debates. Right over there was enough. At that point, it was like, okay, this is fractured. They're not working together now. Now all is lost. Like I said, Bernie Sanders bears a bigger bit of responsibility, in my personal opinion, because he's the leader of the movement, and he should have brought people together, coalitions, not just Tulsi Gabbard, but Tom Steyer, Andrew Yang. I don't know where Elizabeth Warren is on this whole thing. Who knows? I think we'll get into it a little bit later, but that was the big responsibility. And at this particular point, both Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and when people say, Tulsi shouldn't have done what she did for Bernie, bull. No, she should have. Everything that happened should have happened, and I'm glad it did happen because they are still on the same side of the spectrum when it comes to progressives. I think Tulsi's whole campaign is just a subdivision of Bernie's with a little bit more nuance when it comes to foreign policy and election integrity and civil liberties. But for the most part, I'm glad all that stuff happened, and I'm confident in the future they'll work things out. They'll talk about some things because Bernie's going to have a lot of time to sit and think. It's not just the election rigging, fam. We can talk about his whole campaign, his campaign staff, and how that really threw things off kilter. His whole ideology, I think he got away from the class warfare a little bit too much when that was his big type of point where he could have nailed that down. So I think that we should all just step back, let them have the floor. If we forgave Bernie for saying that he believes he can only win as a Democrat because he can't run third party, you have to do the same for Tulsi Gabbard if she believes that she can't win. Now, I'm not going to support Joe Biden, and I think Trump's a better choice, but that's where I stand on the whole thing.
Yeah, okay. It's ultimately, they both said they would support the nominee and believe Joe Biden is a better candidate. But that's the thing, like, Bernie Sanders is still in this race. Whether you guys believe he can win or not, that's irrelevant.
Semantics.
He's still in this race. And that's the reality. And he is still having phone banks. He's still having people call. I mean, this isn't, and it's not about the delegate math here. What people have to realize is about Bernie's movement and the platform he has and going to the convention and demanding that we get something out of it. And I mean, if that's all he can do, that's all he can do. But that's completely different than saying, I'm going to go now in this moment, where it could have given Bernie some momentum. It could have given our movement a momentum. Because
That's on
Tulsi,
Bernie.
No, it's not just on Bernie.
Bernie did not
It
reach
is
out
not
to him.
just
You
on
know
Bernie.
that. You just said that.
No, she literally, you can look at Cullen's tweet. She literally, and her own thing that we're going to show, the own screenshot that I have that we're going to show later. She said we spoke. She didn't specify what was it about. I agree that Bernie is to blame when it comes to the lack of coalescing together, but it's not just up to him. I mean, you want to coalesce with Steyer. I mean, Steyer pretty much stabbed Bernie in the back. He started talking about how his Medicare for All plan was going to get people out of healthcare. Andrew Yang right away went out and endorsed Joe Biden, started saying he was going to take PAC money, and then he went on CNN. I mean, to me, it's just you can't coalesce around corruption. You don't join the corrupt system. And this is why I have such a hard time, and I'm going to give Bernie such a hard time. Like Graham said on his show yesterday where I watched it, the moment Bernie Sanders does this, you're going to see me call him out for it. You're going to see me do that. But he hasn't done it yet. And to do it at the convention where he believes he can get more, where it's going to cause a lot of us to stand up and yell at the Democratic Party and tell them, you nominate Joe Biden, we're fucking done with you, and we hope Donald Trump wins and burns this shit down. That's a lot different than going to endorse Joe Biden right now in a moment where it's actually needed to have this momentum.
See, you're going to still focus on right now. I'm going to say this shit was lost a long time ago, especially after the Super Tuesday when he didn't call out any of the rigging. He has the money. He could get the lawyers in place. He didn't stop the main thing that was really, which it was his responsibility from getting him in 2016. Okay. And yes, this thing was lost along the way because it was late until Steyer started attacking to him. Andrew Yang just endorsed Biden last week. You know what I'm saying? Tulsi was there the whole time. There was no coalescing. There was no coalition. And you said this before yourself, fam. The establishment they'll join together.
Yeah.
They will. And they did it in a matter of 3 days. We got our ass sacked. And that
no
wasn't,
one's
there was,
denying Bernie's campaign's culpability.
that's where it was lost.
Or the lack of focus on
And you
election
know his campaign
integrity.
staff.
Absolutely. No one's
Terrible.
denying that. But that's not, you both can exist. Both Bernie's campaign can be negligent and awful, and some of his staff completely incompetent and almost like corrupt to a degree. And she still shouldn't have endorsed Joe Biden.
No way.
Like,
I agree.
beside the point.
I agree. No, I agree that she shouldn't endorse Joe Biden. And once again, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people said she won't endorse anybody. She'll just walk away from this whole process and say enough is enough. But she did say she was going to endorse the friggin' nominee.
And Joe Biden is not the nominee. Unless some of you can go.
You're splitting hairs
I'm
and
not
you're trying.
splitting hairs.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not.
He's going to be the nominee.
Okay,
and you know he is.
But he's not yet. And what I just said is it's not just about the delegate math or that. It's about bigger. It's about the platform. And he's not the nominee. If you guys can find me an article where Bernie Sanders dropped out and
He's
Joe
not the
Biden
nominee,
is the
but they're
nominee.
going to continue rigging it because he hasn't called out the election rigging.
So it's all for nothing.
So it's literally he's gonna go to the convention. It's gonna be a total loss. Okay, and then he what?
We have to accept the fact that we lost this a long time ago.
What does he demand?
Yeah, but we have to accept the fact we lost this a while ago.
And
It
that's
wasn't
your
just what
choice to
happened now.
quit fighting, but that's not my
Nobody's-
choice, and that's
nobody's-
not the
nobody's
choice of a
quit
lot
fighting.
of people.
And
Quit
that's
fighting
just
for a false prophet for Bernie
Yeah.
Sanders.
He's not a prophet, though. That's your
False
number one
prophet to
mistake. He's
everybody.
not a prophet. He is
Well,
a
you're acting
faulty
like he
human
is.
being. No, I'm not. He's a faulty human being. You're acting like he's a prophet because you're angry that he let you down. No, he's a faulty human
No,
being.
because he's
He,
not
like
calling out
Tulsi,
the number
doesn't
one
believe.
most important thing, which is
Neither is
election
Tulsi.
integrity.
Neither is Tulsi.
Well,
That's
we
the
got
thing.
into this. Tulsi's way better on this issue.
And I'm not.
Tulsi doesn't.
I didn't bring up Tulsi.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. if
Tulsi
she- if
doesn't
she's
have the
talking about
money
it.
or the
She's not.
resources to attack this. Bernie does, and that's where his biggest sin is not going after what we talked about. And we can, like I said, there's enough blame to go around at this point.
Nobody has gone after what we talked about, and she just said the Democratic voters chose Biden, which they did not.
She was wrong. She was wrong.
They did not
And I've been
choose Biden.
arguing. I've been sending messages and saying, okay, she has the Securing Elections Integrity Act. She has all this stuff she talks about. She's got a great macro idea, but she didn't pinpoint the small specifics that took place in this particular election where you could have been citing why the Democratic Party was trying to push people out there during an epidemic to vote. They didn't educate. They didn't talk about the exit polls. Tulsi Gabbard also got screwed if you look at the exit polls too in New Hampshire, and she didn't speak out about that as well. And I don't think the Democratic voters voted for shit. I think it's a completely fucking rigged process. So
big controversy because you're such a strong anti-war voice, and then you endorse or support Joe Biden, and he voted for George W. Bush's Iraq War. He supported regime change in Libya. He still supports regime change in Syria. Joe Biden today is against troop withdrawal in Iraq and Syria. I mean, so how can you square that circle? How could, if your message was one thing, endorse a guy who's diametrically opposed? How does that happen?
Look, like I said in my message, I don't agree with Joe Biden on every issue. I'm looking forward, continuing to see how I can best influence our nation's policies to do exactly what I've set out to do. Given the choices that are before us, I have thrown my support behind Joe Biden versus Trump, which is something I've always said I would do, by the way, that I would support the eventual Democratic nominee, given the situation that exists, and continue to use my platform and whatever I am able to use to actually work to bring about this change.
But there's no evidence that we're going to be able to influence Joe Biden, right?
The task before us is great. We've always known this, that when we look at the foreign policy establishment in Washington, the obstacles are serious. But I'm not willing to throw in the towel and walk away and give up the fight. I'm continuing this mission, and I hope that everyone who has come and joined our campaign and who has stood with me in belief in this message and this leadership will continue to stand with me in working to do this.
Why didn't you criticize Joe Biden more in the campaign? And especially since he would be the guy most emblematic of these wars, because he, got us into them and he's always for them and voted for the Iraq War. So people were wondering why you didn't criticize him more during the campaign.
I think if you look throughout my campaign, I really wasn't focused on criticizing one or another candidate as in multiple interviews, and people ask similar questions. Well, what about this person? What about that person? My focus has always been on my candidacy, what I'm offering to the American people, the kind of leadership and experience that I bring, and pointing out problems with the political infrastructure, the political powerful elite in Washington, and the systemic change that we need to bring about.
I mean, what kind of answer was that? Jimmy was visibly uncomfortable. I mean, I would be uncomfortable. Like, she's giving you the runaround. She's giving you a bullshit answer. She's literally saying, he's like, wait, but how are you going to support somebody that's diametrically opposed to everything you stand for? Well, I'm just going to keep my platform and keep doing but how, what's the guarantee that you're going to push Joe Biden on anything? Yeah. She's like, well, we're going to, I never criticized Joe Biden because, no, you kidding me? She went after Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris. She went after all these people. And I thought, hey, she has a soft spot for Joe Biden, which both her and Bernie do. That is a given.
Hey, all my friends.
And that's irritated the hell out of me. But I figure when push comes to shove, she's going to go after him. No, she endorsed him instead. Like, I'm sorry, there is no way in hell that this isn't a bullshit answer, because she even said, based on what it is now, I'm choosing to support Joe Biden. She chose to support Joe Biden, not Bernie Sanders against Donald Trump. I mean,
Bernie Sanders doesn't have it. He's not going to be the nominee.
Sure, fine.
It's just like when you
don't
told
endorse
me,
anybody until then. For a fact.
I understand, but you even told me at one point that why is Tulsi even still in the race when she's going to be raising money when she has no path to that nominee?
Tulsi had 2 delegates. Pasta Bernie has a lot more,
but he doesn't have a path anymore.
And things are still being counted. So no,
they're being
he has
counted
a very,
in a corrupt,
very,
fake
very,
system.
very slim chance. I just think that she made her choice for whatever reason she's had with Bernie or whatever, and that's the choice she made. But in making that choice, it is a bigger deal than Bernie doesn't have a path. Whether you think that or not, it's much bigger than that. It is what we're fighting for as a movement, and that in the movement itself, it completely just like pushed her away from any sort of progressive cred. The centrists don't care. They'll switch on and on. Whoever. Neera Tanden praising her, that looks awful for her. It really does. It doesn't help her in any way. It really doesn't. I just, there's no good reason. She couldn't give a good reason to why she's supporting Joe Biden, period.
She said she would support the nominee.
And
that's
he
her
is not
reason.
the nominee.
He will be the nominee.
But he
And
is not the nominee yet.
He will be the
But
nominee.
he's not the nominee
It doesn't
yet.
make a difference.
It
He's going to
absolutely
be the
makes a
nominee.
difference,
We know
but
it's
he's
not. The math is not there.
But-
Bernie has not called out any of the election integrity issues.
Okay, you go back
so
to
going
that
forward,
election
what's going to
integrity.
be?
I get it. But that's not, the reality is Joe Biden is not the nominee. That saying that is a lie. It's infactual. He is
Do you
not
think
the
he's
nominee
going to be
yet.
the nominee?
I don't know. Possibly. He hasn't even shown. Joe Biden, first of all, not to get ahead of ourselves, he's been completely missing. He hasn't shown up in days. Nobody knows where he is. Literally, this pandemic and the way Bernie Sanders is responding changes everything. People are going to start rioting if the government doesn't do something right now. This changes everything. Anything is possible right now. To give up and say, yeah, Joe Biden's the nominee at a time when we thought she was an ally, or at the very least would not
You thought
endorse.
she was an ally when
I
you're going to
did.
sit there and he's going to go, there's only 2 people left in the race? That's not how you treat your allies,
Okay,
especially
so
when
you're
you did
gonna
the same
go
thing
and
to
get
Martin
it,
O'Malley.
she's literally saying that
He's
that
not
had nothing to do
justifying-
with
he
it.
hasn't- He's not justifying that. That's why.
No, but it's like,
But she literally said
how is
that's
she
not
an
why she did
ally
that.
when you're not even calling her an
The
ally? You're not
question
even
is-
acknowledging her existence.
The question is she was she treated as an ally by the Bernie Sanders campaign?
No, I
during
don't think
this
she
campaign?
was.
Okay.
No.
No, I don't think she was, but she
So
is. And it's bigger than your hurt feelings. It's bigger than your personal individual. This is a movement. It's bigger than her. It's bigger than Bernie Sanders. And their faults, what Bernie Sanders has done and what he hasn't done, has cost us our movement, as what she just did also.
Would you say that Tulsi treated Bernie as an ally more so than Bernie treated Tulsi as an ally this campaign?
Up until this point, I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least visibly. At least visibly. Because I know publicly, yeah. Because I know
It's
for a
not even a
fact that
doubt.
they've had
Has she
issues.
acted like Elizabeth Warren? Come on.
Had Elizabeth Warren done what Tulsi did, I would love to see the reactions of everybody else as to how they would treat her versus how they're making a lot of rationalizations for Tulsi.
Well, Tulsi doesn't have a super PAC and what we're.
Oh,
gonna
of
get
course.
into that,
Yeah.
Of course. But
so.
still.
Endorsing Bernie in 2016 has been a net negative for Tulsi, both politically and financially.
Nope, that's what Nico's saying, and I got into it with him this morning. That's ridiculous. She wouldn't be here without Bernie. None of us would. Bernie started this movement. It gave her the credit as a progressive person. If she had literally been a pawn of the DNC, progressives would have hated her the whole time.
Exactly.
That's such bullshit.
Exactly.
That like the fact that yes, the Bernie Sanders campaign didn't do a good job. They were awful, and I'm going to continue talking about how awful they were because it's costing Bernie pretty much this election. And a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about it.
So-
but the reality is, regardless of that, of how hurt she may have been, she's even saying that's not even it. So why are people so focused on that? I don't know. Either way, it's wrong for her to have endorsed Biden.
I agree with all your goals and all this stuff, and it just seems like aren't you worried that it completely dilutes your message to like what I know you signed that pledge, and so you have, but you always buck the system, you always go against, and so it just seems like it could have been a bigger statement had you said, I'm not endorsing Joe Biden because this is crazy. This guy's a warmongering maniac. Plus, he's obviously in mental decline. This is the corporate party just killing itself, right? The Democratic Party is revealing that it's unable to even put. He's a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton. He has no chance to beat Donald Trump. And so, I don't know. Wasn't this a time to maybe make even a bigger stand? What do you say?
I am very clear-eyed about the political landscape that's before us. And as I have always and will always do, I'll make my decisions about how I feel I can best make that positive impact, how I can best work to bring about the kind of change that I've committed my life to doing. And that hasn't changed, and it'll never change.
So, did you reach out to the Bernie campaign to offer an endorsement or a conversation?
Yeah, I've reached out, but my conversations with them, I'll keep between us and them.
Oh, okay. So, you didn't offer your endorsement to the Sanders campaign?
Yeah, like I said, I reached out, and I'll keep my conversations between us and them.
And so, have you discussed position with Joe Biden in his campaign?
No.
Okay.
She denied the what Jai said. It was, he was emotional. He took it back. She took it back. She's like, no, they don't want. She doesn't
Well,
want
I'm
to talk
sure.
about whatever.
Well, the main message from Jai's message was that the Bernie campaign treated her like shit, right? That was the main message. So maybe they ignored her, but she doesn't feel like they was like treating like shit.
Yeah, well, whatever. You can speculate all you want, but the fact is, it's all speculation. Because other people in the Bernie Sanders campaign have told me, yes, that they were talking, and then they had disagreements.
But we know that how the treatment was of Tulsi's campaign.
From the surrogates.
Publicly, when he
Yeah,
said
publicly
it's
from
down to 2 people. I mean, there,
I feel like
we keep
that's a
talking
little bit.
about that.
I feel because I agree that was
it was
off-putting,
terrible.
But I think
Awful.
people made it a bigger deal than what it was.
How is that a bigger deal when you stuck your neck out for Martin O'Malley for the same thing 4 years prior? And then you want to be the party of exclusivity, of women's rights, of people of color rights, and you want to end racism and sexism, and you just did that to her.
You can't be arrogant and say it's done when people are still doing work to make sure their votes are counted. I just think that's very dismissive.
Yeah, fam, you know very well that the votes are not being counted properly. This whole thing was a sham.
People are doing their jobs to make sure
I mean,
these
it's
votes
irresponsible to make
not,
believe that somebody has a chance to win when they have no chance to win.
It's not done, but they're okay. They've.
I think it's irresponsible for disillusioning people.
You agree the elections were rigged. You agree the elections so far were rigged, right?
Absolutely.
Do you think the next states they're all going to be rigged?
Of course they are.
For the most part, yeah, especially New York. But here's the thing, Jonathan.
So
you don't give up on that. That's exactly what they want you to do.
You come out and call it out.
Yeah, but guess
what? You call it out
if Bernie Sanders isn't calling it out, it is their supporters, the volunteers, all these people's jobs to continue talking about it. And that's exactly what they're doing. By telling them that it's done, you're really not even advocating for that anyway. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And she didn't have an answer to when he was like, well, but you normally buck the establishment. Oh,
yeah.
no.
And
no.
she said at the end of the day, that's what she's going to do.
But how you don't do that by endorsing
Bernie Sanders
Joe Biden.
did the same thing 4 years ago, and he's going to do it again.
No, stop equating that. It's not the same thing.
How do you figure?
He got the Unity Reform Commission. He got to get rid of the superdelegates in the first round. He did what he thought he could do.
That does nothing without voting.
Just so he could run again. And that we gave him the benefit because
and
we thought he was going to do something
again.
about it. And he fucking isn't
thing.
addressing election integrity. And that is an issue that I have literally addressed the entire time, of course, with him. Every single time.
Yes.
I've talked to so many people, and they cannot, for the life of them, get him to address it. They can't.
Yes.
And I really don't know, short of sitting down and shaking Bernie and being like, Bernie, do you see... They think it's a lost cause. They think that they don't have the capacity to do it. Pasta, this is what I'm telling you. So guess what? Bernie is one person. I'm not going to ignore everybody else that's out there doing work for him.